Hello friends, my name is Jess and welcome back to my channel, Books Past Bedtime. Today we are sitting here on the floor. I filmed here a lot when I first started my channel because I didn't have a tripod. Today we are filming on the floor because my room is a disaster and this angle kind of conceals that from you. So we're not going to talk about it. I'm in the process of moving, transitioning jobs. It's a mess. It's a disaster, but we're rolling with it. And I think this looks okay. I'm afraid about being too close to the camera, but I think it's all right. I think it's all right. Okay. Today I'm going to be talking with you guys about some books that I have read recently. I have been out of the habit of filming monthly wrap-ups, so I wanted to go through and touch on some of the books that I've read recently that I haven't talked on this channel yet. There are definitely some books that I have read that aren't included in this video, and most of them have a reading vlog that is coming up that's not released yet. They're included in that, so I'm going to be talking about them in depth in those videos, so I don't really want to spoil those. So we're just going to talk about books that I've read recently that have been in videos that have already come out or that I've read and never talked about. So basically I think the last wrap-up I filmed was my June wrap-up, and I haven't filmed any wrap-ups since then. So these are going to be all the books that I've read from July through September, so the third quarter of the year basically. That is the plan, and let's just jump right into it. Now I did first want to quickly touch on some books that were included in recent reading vlogs that I released during this quarter. I'm not going to go into depth on my thoughts, but I just wanted to mention them as I did read them these past couple of months. So the first couple books I want to talk about I read in my vlog where I read my friend nicoli's favorite books. In that video I read The Japanese Lover by 𝗙𝗵𝗱𝗮𝗍, which I absolutely loved and rated 4.5 stars. I also read The Scent Keeper by 𝗙𝗵𝗱𝗮𝗍, which I wasn't the biggest fan of. I definitely had some issues with it, so I gave that one maybe 2.5 stars. And then the third book I read in that video was The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I gave this book an easy 5 stars, and this might be my absolute favorite book that I've read so far this year. Spoiler alert, we'll see if anything can top it, but it was so good. Now if you want to hear my complete thoughts on those 3 books, definitely check out that reading vlog where I read them and talked all about them, but that's a little overview. I also recently read my friend Annie's favorite books, and I read 3 books for that video as well. The first book I read for that was The Empress of Salt and Fortune, and for some reason I didn't write the author down on my little notes sheet, so sorry, it's on the screen though. I really enjoyed this one and gave it about 4 stars. Same thing for The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan Hay. I also really enjoyed this one and ended up giving it 4 stars. And the last book I read for that video was A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine, and this one was chunky and slow, so I didn't enjoy it quite as much, but I still gave it 3 stars. It definitely was an objectively good book. But again, if you want to know what my full thoughts on those 3 books, definitely check out my reading vlog where I read Annie's favorites, because I go super in depth on my feelings and what I thought about all the aspects of the books. So that's an overview of some of the books that I've been in recent reading vlogs, and now we're just going to jump right into all of the books I have here that I haven't talked about at all yet on this channel. I don't think. Maybe in a recommendation video or 2. Not really. Okay. Whatever. The first book I haven't talked about on this channel that I read, I think in July, was Hairpin Bridge by Taylor Adams. So in this book, we're following our main character whose sister has gone missing under mysterious circumstances, and she does not actually believe the official report of how her sister died. The police have said it's an accident, I think, and that her car just went off this hairpin bridge turn thing. So our main character goes there to kind of investigate what's happening, and I think somebody gets in contact with her and lets her know that they know more about the situation, so she goes there to meet them. Things just got crazy. This book takes place over a really short time span, it's all in the one day. So it's super fast-paced and engaging, but it's not the most realistic story, and it was kind of goofy to read. There's this really long drawn-out gunfight. How really long and drawn-out can a gunfight be? Apparently 200 pages. Needless to say, I really enjoyed listening to this one. It was a really fast read, but definitely wasn't no exit good. It was pretty far from no exit good, to be honest. So I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars because it was a great time, but just kind of goofy. It wasn't that great of a read, you know? The next book on my little list here is Darling by Kay Ingram. I read this with The Whiners, which is my friend Amanda, Sasha, Rachel, and Darian's book club, and I got to be a guest host and it was so much fun. But this book, on the other hand, wasn't that much fun. It was kind of silly, honestly, which makes me so sad because Kay Ingram is one of my favorite authors. I love The Wicker King. I love The Weight of the Stars. Their other books are absolutely amazing, but this one fell really flat for me, and I was anticipating it so highly because it's a Peter Pan retelling. Peter Pan is one of my favorite Disney stories. I grew up with the movies. They've always been one of my favorites. I just really couldn't get behind this book. Basically, we're following our main character, Wendy Darling, and this a boy shows up in her room, and he's missing his jacket, which is his shadow, I guess. And he invites her to this party and she agrees to just go to this party with this random boy that she doesn't know. And he has a friend named 𝗙𝗵𝗴, like literally her name is 𝗙𝗵𝗴 in this modern retelling of Peter Pan. And 𝗙𝗵𝗴 is just kind of like mean to her at first, and then it's later revealed that she's mean to her because she's trying to get her to go home because she doesn't want her there for reasons other than like jealousy. There's something really sketchy going on with Peter Pan himself. They go on this like wild night, I guess, and Wendy's just like along for the ride until she wants to escape, and then this book was really weird. It was really weird. It was supposed to be like a dark thriller retelling of Peter Pan, and I just don't think any of it landed very well. The story was kind of convoluted. It really didn't make sense, and it didn't feel like a modern retelling, especially because all of the characters like maintained their original names, which I just thought was strange and just took me out of the story a lot. So I wasn't a huge fan of this one, unfortunately, and I ended up giving it about 2 stars. Next on my list is a little bit more of a positive one, and that is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. I read this also in July. This was Riley Sager's newest release. It follows the story of this girl. I believe her name is Charlie. Yeah, Charlie. And Charlie is having a really hard time. She's a college student, and last semester her best friend and roommate was actually brutally murdered by this guy on campus, and Charlie harbors a lot of guilt around this incident because she was out with her roommate that night and kind of left her there because she wanted to go home and her roommate didn't. So she kind of feels a lot of responsibility for this incident. So she's having a really hard time dealing with school and responsibilities and everything going around. She really just wants to take a break and go home for a while. So that is what she arranges to do. And instead of like waiting a second for her boyfriend to drive her or for her to get another ride home, she agrees to let a stranger drive her back home. And this is like the 80s. There's no cell phones or anything. So kind of a really dumb idea. And naturally, as you can imagine, things go a little wild and there's lots of twists and turns. For the first like half of this book, I thought I like had it figured out. I thought it was really predictable and I knew exactly what was going to happen. I was taken for a wild ride. There were so many twists and turns that I did not see coming. And I just really loved the way that this book happened in the direction that it went in. I just thought it was so much fun and it was such a quick, fast read. And I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, like gasping at reveals and just being like so shocked by things. Granted, I'm not the most like analytical thriller reader. Like I kind of just let the experience wash over me. I'm not sitting there like trying to guess what exactly is happening. So if you're that kind of reader, you might not like it as much. I don't know. Some people have said it's predictable, but I personally loved it. Thought it was so much fun. Might be my new favorite Riley Sager book, and I gave this one like an easy 5 stars. No, it's probably not my favorite book ever, but it was a 5-star read to me. So really loved this one. The next couple books I'm going to talk about were actually featured in a 24-hour reading vlog that I did. I think I put it out in August, but I filmed it in July. I don't know. Details like that don't matter. Don't know why I'm telling you that, but the next 3 books I think I'm going to talk about were in that reading vlog. If you want more info on them, I don't know, I'm going to talk about them anyway. The first is The Night Tiger by 𝗙𝗵𝗴 𝗠𝗲. This is a book I read for an in-person book club that I have in my neighborhood, and basically this is a Malaysian style fantasy book. We're following 2 kind of different timelines. One is of this young boy. He's an apprentice to this healer, and this healer dies, and he has lost his finger at some point and has gotten in somebody else's possession. And according to like Malaysian traditions, all pieces of the body must be buried with that person when they die so that they can be completely at rest. So he tasks his apprentice with finding the rest of his finger so he can be buried with it. We're following that timeline of the boy trying to find the finger. And then we're also following this other young girl who has a lot of pressures on her. Her stepdad is abusive and she's really just trying to make her own way in the world, kind of get away from him, become independent. So we're kind of seeing her struggles, and eventually these 2 timelines do converge because our female main character ends up with the finger. She like finds it somewhere and is like, what the heck? She's trying to get rid of it at first, keeps coming back to her kind of. So she has this connection to the boy, the main character. So the timelines converge, and there are magical elements in this book. There's like shape-shifting and different, almost like potion magic. I don't know. It was really cool. It was a very well-written, well-constructed story. Very atmospheric. The characters all felt very realistic. It was really fun like discussing this as as a book club too. It was great. I did think it was kind of slow at times, and I didn't always like every little thing that happened, all of the choices that were made, but overall I thought it was really good, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Next is Cool for the Summer by 𝗙𝗲𝗲 𝗦𝘚. This is a YA queer contemporary romance. It is between these 2 girls who had this summer fling. They kind of like didn't continue it after the summer. They just kind of like weren't really sure where they stood. They went to different schools from different places. I think it's kind of a Grease retelling because the one girl moves to the school, so then they both go to the same school and they just like don't really understand what's going on. The girl that is always, I don't remember anybody's name, I'm sorry, this is like hard to follow, but the girl that has always gone to this particular school that the book is set in, she's bisexual, I think. Yes, she's bisexual, and she's always had this crush on this one particular boy. He's like a really popular boy at school, blah, blah, blah. And he finally, after so many years, takes an interest in her this year. So she's kind of like started to date him because she doesn't really know what happened with the other girl over the summer, or what's going on with that. But then when she shows up at the school, there's this conflict, this little love triangle thing. It's really not a love triangle because our main character really doesn't have feelings for this guy, but lots of miscommunication ensues. So I was honestly really surprised by how much I liked this one because I don't always like love triangles in high school, kind of grow out of contemporaries a little bit, but to be perfectly frank, I absolutely loved this book. I flew through it. I thought it was so much fun. I really loved the characters. I was really rooting for the romance. I thought it had a great mix of like angst, and while the miscommunication was a little bit annoying, it wasn't too much because this book is overall really short. It's less than 300 pages. Conflict was resolved pretty quickly, and I just thought it was a really cute, really fun, sweet book. I loved it. So if you're looking for like a cute YA queer contemporary, especially if you're looking for like bisexual rep, I really loved this book. I believe both of the girls are actually bisexual. I don't remember. Really loved this one. Ended up giving it 4.5 stars just because it's not like a revolutionary book. I don't know if it's a 5-star for me, but it was really, really good. 4.5 stars. And the last book that I featured in that 24-hour reading vlog was One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. Oh my god, I loved this book so much. I feel like this is getting mixed reviews online, but personally, I loved it so much. I really saw myself in August, and I had the biggest crush on Jane. Can I please meet someone like Jane, please? Anyway, basically in this book we are following our main character August. August is in New York City just kind of trying to find herself. She's in school, she's working at this diner, but then she meets this girl Jane on the subway and she forms this crush on her, and she keeps consistently seeing her every day on the subway, and it becomes a thing. They start to talk, they really like each other, but Jane is a little off, and it turns out she is actually displaced from the 1970s, is just stuck in this time loop on the subway and like can never get off. And so August sets out to try and figure out how she can help Jane get off this time loop, but it's kind of a conflict because she also like wants Jane to stay with her so they can date. God, it was so freaking cute. I loved this book so much. I really liked the plot. I really liked the time loop aspect. I thought it was really cool, and I thought it was like an interesting conflict because it was kind of the kind of conflict where it's like us against the world, which I prefer than to like internal relationship conflicts. And I really loved the friend group in this book. I feel like that was one of the reasons why I loved Red, White, and Royal Blue so much, which is Casey McQuiston's debut book. I just think they have a really good grasp on like what makes great banter and a great friendship dynamic, and so that was a wonderful aspect of this book as well, aside from the romance, which I also loved. So I really loved this one. This one's also probably going to end up on my favorites of the year list because I gave it 5 stars. Next, there is a couple sprinkled in here that I was gonna do for a video, but I ended up scrapping it because I just was not very good about filming the vlog clips and updates when I was going through the books, and I didn't want to read the last book for the video. I just scrapped it. So this is one of the books for that video, and that is Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. Now, Haley's gonna hate me for this one because I really didn't enjoy this book. This is basically a thriller about this woman who, when she was younger, I think in high school or college, she got tangled up in this incident where this boy that she was dating ended up murdering her friend, and she always knew about it, didn't tell anyone, kind of aided and abetted the whole situation. And then finally some evidence comes to light where, like, I don't even know, 15 years later, they find out that she was an accomplice. She never told anyone about this, and she ends up going to jail in the very beginning of the book. And basically that's half of the book takes place in jail, and then the other half is like her getting her footing after jail and like us finding out what actually happened that night. And I just didn't really like this one very much. I didn't like the writing. I just couldn't get into it. The beginning part set in prison, I didn't see the point of it. I felt like this book didn't follow that like writing rule where you're supposed to start as close to the climax as possible, as close to the action of the book as possible. Like the whole first part of the book where she's in jail, I just was like, why are we here? I don't really get it. I don't understand what's happening. I feel like it could have been, I mean, I understand why we were there, but I feel like it could have been shortened quite a bit and we would have had the same impact. And I didn't really like the whole overarching storyline either and what happened in the end. I just didn't vibe with this book at all, and so I ended up giving it 2 stars. Also, like, there's a lot of like assault content, like sexual assault content that was very triggering to me. I did not like reading about that either. This is also very gory, very graphic. It just wasn't my ideal thriller. So 2 stars. And another subpar thriller that I read was The Lost Ones by Sheena Kamal. I read this one because the Literally Dead book club that's hosted by Kayla over at Books and Lola was reading it. I didn't go to the live show, but I read the book. Basically, this book is about this woman who is kind of like a drifter. She just doesn't really have any kind of attachments, but it turns out that she did have a daughter that she put up for adoption many years ago. That daughter ends up going missing, and so the adopted family ends up contacting her because she used to be some kind of tracker or something, or like a bounty hunter. I don't really know. But they contact her and they're like, we think you're probably the only one that can find our daughter. She's missing. Please help us find her. She didn't run away. We think she was kidnapped. Our main character goes and tries to find her daughter and realizes that there's all this like weird tangled up science company experiment thing happening. It was really weird. My main problem with this book was that it didn't feel like it had any kind of direction to it. It felt like it was all over the place. There were so many different plot threads that just had no relation to one another and like no business being in the same book. I think it started out pretty good, but it really lost direction and I really just had no idea what was going on. I think this book really would have benefited from being simplified because there was like this thread about her being an alcoholic, and there was this thread about her daughter being kidnapped, and there was this thread about her relationship with other people, and there was this thread about her like bosses at work and her dog, and like there was so much stuff going on in this book and it just none of it went together and made any sense. So I didn't like this one either and gave this one 2 stars. Another really bad thriller I read recently was The Perfect Marriage by 𝗙𝗵𝗄𝗏. I read this during the Enneagramathon and Readathon. It was our group book for Enneagram 1s, which is what I am. And I absolutely fucking hated this book. So basically this book is about this high-powered lawyer. Her husband is a little bit sleazy and has been cheating on her, and his mistress ends up dead, and she's dead in this guy's bed, and he was there that night, so he becomes the #1 suspect, and so his wife decides that she is the only person capable of defending him in the court of law, so she defends him, which conflict of interest much, but I guess as a book, suspension of belief, whatever. I don't know. I was kind of upset about that, but you know, what are you gonna do? Anyway, this really just turned into a book about women hating women, and the main character was just kind of a psychopath. I also hated the husband. I hated everyone in this book. I hated everything they did. I hated every decision that was made. There was absolutely nothing about this book that I liked. The writing was really bad. It was set in Virginia, which is kind of cool. I was like, books that are set in Virginia because that's where I live, but it did not paint Virginia in a very good light, so was not a fan. This is, I think, the only book on this list that I actually did give 1 star to. I absolutely hated it. I thought it was awful. Might be the worst book I've read so far this year, if we're being honest. Going back up on a more positive note, the next book that I read was Shipped by Angie Hockman. This is a romance following our main 2 characters who work at this like travel magazine company. Basically, they're both up for the same promotion and neither of them have ever been on one of the company's cruises. They do like specialty cruises. So they get sent together on this cruise to the Galapagos Islands to get a feel for what the company does. And while they're there, they're supposed to come up with this proposal that they're going to pitch, and whoever has the better proposal will get the promotion. There is already kind of a hateful relationship between these two because our female main character feels like our male main character like belittles her and doesn't take her seriously, and also she believes he took credit for something that she did and put together, and she's just pissed about that. So she hates him. He doesn't really have any hateful feelings towards her. He just knows that she hates him. So they go on this cruise together and immediately there's some kind of like chemistry between them, and it just builds throughout the cruise. She eventually comes to find out that he's actually not as bad as she thought he was, and they start falling for one another. I was honestly shocked by how much I loved this book. I thought it was so cute. I absolutely loved the romance. I was rooting for them like the whole time, except for like a little part at the end. The third act conflict was drug out a little bit too much. For the most part, this book is like on par with like The Hating Game. It was really good. And honestly, if you liked The Hating Game, you definitely would like Shipped. They have similar vibes, but I really loved like the travel aspect of Shipped as well, and like the content creation, social media stuff. I just really loved both of our main characters. I thought they were so funny, and I loved their banter together, and I loved their chemistry. And I really liked how this one ended as well. I thought it was very like empowering and perfect for both of our characters, and I really liked how our male love interest stood up for our female love interest in the end, like really and truly committed to her fully the entire time. I really liked that. So I absolutely loved this one. This might be a 5-star read for me. I think I probably gave it like 4.5 stars, but it was so good. I can't think of anything about it that I didn't like at this time, so would definitely recommend. Next, I want to talk about The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. This is a dark academia-based thriller, and it is set in Cambridge University in the UK, so definitely perfect dark academia vibes. In it, we're following our main character, Mariana. Mariana has a niece that goes to Cambridge, and one of her friends mysteriously dies at Cambridge University. So Mariana goes to stay with her for a little while. She finds her niece really freaked out, really stressed, and she's trying to get to the bottom of like what actually may have happened to her friend, and she really thinks her niece knows something. Finally, her niece admits that she thinks it was one of her professors, 𝗙𝗵𝗻𝗄𝗃, who runs this like really weird cult of students. I say students, but they are all specifically young girls. They're all always wearing white dresses, always around him. He gives them special tutoring lessons, whatever, you know, secret society stuff. Mariana also finds herself very suspicious of him. He's kind of a weirdo, and she's determined to find out what exactly is happening and to keep her niece safe at her school. So I actually really liked this one. It took a very strange turn at the end, which I'm not sure I liked, but overall I really liked this one. It has perfect dark academia vibes. Like if you're really looking for a dark academia book, honestly this is a great one because it's a quick read, it's fast and easy, plus it does really good at giving those vibes. I say the word vibes so much, I need to stop. I really liked this one, and I also really liked how it features cameos from The Silent Patient. These books would be really cool to read back to back, and honestly it might be cool to read this one first because the events in this one chronologically take place before those in The Silent Patient. I really liked that connection. I think it's cool when authors do that and they set their books in the same world, so I really liked this one. I gave it 4 stars. There were some things I had issues with, like specifically the twist at the end. I felt it made me feel kind of icky. If you know, you know. I did really enjoy my reading experience with this one, so positive overall. Next, I want to talk about the 2 books I've read so far for my Fantaseries book club. If you're not already a part of the Fantaseries book club, it is a super fun book club, and we're starting a new series this month in October, so it's a great time to I'll put the info video up here, maybe over here. I don't know where it is exactly, but I'll link it up there, and I'll link stuff for it down below. Basically, this book club is all about reading controversial fantasy series, and we do like 1 book a month until we're finished with the series. And most recently we read the 𝗙𝗵𝗻𝗄𝗃 duology. I don't know if it has a different name, but the first book in this series is 𝗙𝗵𝗻𝗄𝗃 by 𝗙𝗵𝗄𝗃. This is an Arabian inspired fantasy, and we're following our main character 𝗧𝗵𝗆, who is a huntress, except everyone thinks she's a hunter. Everyone thinks she's a boy. She goes into the woods with like a hood up. She kind of like hunts to provide for her family and her community, and she's like legendary across the kingdom. So we're following 𝗧𝗵𝗆, and then on the other hand we're also following Nasir and Altair. Nasir is the Prince of Death. He's like the assassin for the crown, and Altair is, I don't know what he's at the beginning of his book, his friend, somebody else who works in the castle. He's like the general of the army, maybe? I don't know. The king sends the 2 of them on this mission to retrieve this book. He also wants them to like find and kill 𝗧𝗵𝗆, I think. But when they meet up, they decide to team up to find this book because if 𝗧𝗵𝗆 has this tracking ability, it really doesn't matter. If you want to hear the like full book club discussions, I will also link those down below where we go over all of our thoughts in depth of what exactly happened in this book. I overall was not a fan. I thought it was too long, thought it was really slow. I had trouble connecting to the characters. The writing is good, but it's good in a way that it's really flowery, and I feel like that is why I had such trouble connecting to the characters, because for the most part I was trying to decipher the language. I just didn't have a great time with this one, and I ended up giving it 2 stars. And I also had a similar experience with the second book, We Free the Stars. I don't want to go into what it's about because I don't want to spoil anything if you want to read it. Personally had some issues feeling any emotions around it, and I also just thought thought it was kind of too long and needed to be cut down a little bit. This one was a little bit better, I think, because I had already gotten to know the characters, so I already had some kind of relationship with them, even if it wasn't a deep emotional connection. So this one is more of like a 2.5 star read, whereas the first one was definitely just a 2-star read. I don't know. Wasn't a huge fan of these. And then the last book on this list is Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. This is a romance following, well, is it a romance? It's more just like a contemporary book following our main character, Grace. And Grace is very much like Virgo energy, type A, type 1. She has her entire life organized, her entire life planned out. She's a very hard worker, going after what she wants. She's just finished her PhD program in astronomy, and in order to celebrate that, her and her best friends go to Vegas, and Grace gets a little bit drunk and ends up married to another woman. This other woman is gone in the morning, but Grace kind of vaguely remembers everything that happened, and she has a ring on her finger. And so she doesn't even know this girl's name or where she went, where she lived, anything. So she goes back to her regular life. She's trying to find a job, and she just keeps thinking about this girl. So she sets out to try and find her. I don't know if she left a card or something, but she ends up finding her podcast. This woman runs a podcast, so she finds her through there and starts to communicate, talk to her. Grace is feeling very burnt out from going through school for so long, so she decides to get away for a little bit and go to New York to spend some time with her. There's lots of really big, really heavy themes in this book, like finding yourself, growing up with abusive parents. I don't feel like that was addressed enough in this book, but her parents were definitely abusive to Grace, which was very not fun to read about. Also just like dealing with mental health, like depression. Grace definitely had some depression, anxiety, which we get good rep of her going to therapy later on in the book, but she definitely destroys a lot of things before that happens. This was a really hard book for me to read. The writing was not something I really loved. It was just very like flowery. I'm trying to find a sentence that I can kind of share with you. So for example, like pretty much every sentence in the book is written like this. So this paragraph says, Grace heads for a room. She hasn't slept there in days, but she aches for the comfort of her own bed. Her weighted covers envelope her in warmth and darkness when she crawls underneath them completely. Suddenly, Grace feels happy to have locked her door. She might think too much, get lost in her head, but sometimes she just needs to be alone with her own thoughts. Like, the writing is very flowery and poetic, which makes it difficult to get through quickly. I feel like I prefer a more straightforward writing style where it's like, she said this, they did this. It's just easier to read, and it's easier to like get drawn into the story with language like that because there's nothing that throws you off or throws you out of the story. And I feel like the writing in this book was just completely opposite of that. So I had a lot of trouble connecting with the characters. So overall, this was not the book for me. I definitely appreciated the representation and the mental health discussions, but I just didn't enjoy my reading experience with it, basically. So this one got 2.5 stars from me, which is like an it's okay rating. It's like right in the middle, but definitely not a new favorite or anything. So those are the 20 books I've read in the last 3 months. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below if you've read and loved or hated any of these. I would love to know. And that is basically it for me today. So if you would like, definitely follow me on Instagram and Twitter. You can also subscribe to this channel. There will be consistent uploads for the rest of the year, so definitely stay tuned. Don't forget to check out the description for any links that I mentioned throughout the video, and I think that's all I've got. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!